The monitor screamed in a piercing alarm, lights flashing, the room filled with the tense hum of life and death urgency. Baby Nico's tiny chest rose and fell in shallow gasps, and every adult present felt the weight of helplessness pressing down like a stone. 24 doctors swarmed the room, their voices overlapping, each one shouting instructions, each one certain the outcome was out of their hands. The air was thick with the metallic scent of medicine, and yet, amid all the chaos, a small figure watched silently from the doorway. Lily Mercer, 10 years old, her coat slightly too big, hands clutching the edges of her grandmother's notebook, eyes wide but unwavering, had seen details no one else had. The glint of the sunlight on the potted oleander by the window, the subtle residue overlooked by the seasoned staff, spoke to her trained eyes. Her pulse raced. Every heartbeat thundered in her chest as she took a single step forward, then another. The doctors noticed her movement, confusion flashing across their faces, but Lily's gaze never wavered from the crib. Elio Caruso, the Mafia boss, stood rigid behind the crib, a pillar of controlled power, jaw clenched, hands gripping his wife's shoulders. His eyes, steel gray, flicked toward Lily, a mix of disbelief and curiosity reflecting the smallest crack in his usual composure. The room seemed to hold its breath as Lily crossed the floor, sneakers squeaking faintly against the polished tiles, the rhythmic beeping of monitors echoing like a drum of urgency. She whispered, "Stop!" and the entire room froze, time suspended in that word. Doctors paused mid-motion, hands hovering over instruments, their voices caught in throats that had been shouting just a second ago. Lily leaned close to the crib, tiny hands steady despite the fear, tracing the delicate contours of the plant's leaves, recalling the remedies her grandmother had taught her through stories of quiet heroism. The monitors continued to beep, a steady counterpoint to the tension, as she carefully applied her knowledge, correcting the subtle threat that no adult had recognized. Elio's eyes widened incrementally with each successful intervention, his normally unreadable face betraying shock, awe, and relief all at once. The baby stirred slightly, a fist curling, then unclenching, and the first smile of hope cracked through the room's collective anxiety. The doctors exhaled simultaneously, a wave of tension releasing like a storm clearing, but the sense of unease lingered, threaded through the glances of the staff, who realized this child had altered the fate of the infant before them. Lily straightened, brushing back a stray lock of hair, and met Elio's gaze. Gratitude and recognition passed silently between them, more powerful than words, more profound than any medical procedure could convey. And just as the moment settled, a flicker of shadow moved in the corridor beyond the glass, a subtle hint that the night's trials were far from over, leaving an echo of suspense that tugged at every heartbeat in the room, promising that the story had only begun. The room had settled into a fragile calm, monitors ticking steadily, and yet the tension had not fully lifted. Lily Mercer, hands still trembling slightly from her hurried intervention, remained at the edge of the crib, watching the baby's small chest rise with each breath. Elio Caruso's gaze stayed fixed on her, a mixture of amazement and something softer, almost disbelief. The other doctors whispered among themselves, glancing repeatedly at the girl who had just altered the course of life itself. Every sound in the room seemed amplified, the quiet steps of nurses, the gentle hum of air purifiers, the faint creak of the door as someone shifted. Lily's mind raced. She knew the baby was safe for now, but every instinct told her that danger was never far from someone like Elio. She had seen shadows move in the hallway just moments ago, fleeting, almost imperceptible, yet her trained eyes did not miss the signs. Elio finally spoke, his voice low but firm, commanding attention without raising volume. He asked her name, and Lily responded with a calm that belied her racing heart. The words hung in the air, thick with meaning, as Elio stepped closer, the weight of his presence palpable. He lowered his hand from his wife's shoulder, his eyes never leaving Lily's face, and for a moment, it was as if the room itself had shrunk around the three of them. The baby stirred again, tiny fingers curling, and Lily's relief was tempered by the knowledge that her actions might only be the first of many tests. Outside the window, a shadow lingered, subtle but undeniable, and her gaze flicked toward it instinctively. The hospital staff, unaware of the potential threat, continued their routines, but Lily sensed the rhythm of the building had changed, as though it recognized her presence and the power of her choices. Elio's voice cut through her thoughts, quiet, precise, acknowledging her courage, his approval a spark that ignited something fierce in her chest. She nodded, unsure how much to reveal, aware that trust would be measured in moments, in the seconds between life and death, and in the action she had yet to take. The monitors continued their rhythmic beep, a heartbeat she now associated with more than just the infant's health, but with the fragile balance of control, responsibility, and danger. Lily took a cautious step back, scanning the room, noting every potential risk, every unnoticed detail that could shift the delicate piece into chaos. Her mind catalogued, assessed, and prepared for action, because she knew instinctively that this was only the beginning. Elio's eyes followed her movements, calculating, assessing, and something unspoken passed between them, a silent pact forged in the crucible of the last critical minutes. And as Lily's gaze drifted to the hallway once more, the faintest movement caught her attention, a subtle flicker of motion that promised that the night's story was far from over, leaving an uneasy sense of anticipation lingering in the air. The soft hum of the monitors no longer felt comforting, it felt like a countdown, every beep a reminder that safety was fleeting. Lily Mercer remained by the crib, her small hands gripping the edge of the bedrail, eyes darting to every movement, every flicker of shadow across the room. Elio Caruso stepped closer, his presence immense, yet the sharp lines of his face softened slightly as he observed her focus, a silent acknowledgement of her courage. The doctors whispered urgently, their calm veneer cracking as they tried to anticipate the next move, and yet Lily's intuition had already calculated the next steps. Every breath felt charged, thick with potential consequence, as she carefully checked the environment, the tiny details invisible to everyone else. Elio's gaze followed her every action, a complex storm of respect, astonishment, and concern swirling behind steel-gray eyes. He spoke softly, almost a challenge, asking why she knew what to do, and Lily's voice, steady but firm, delivered the answer: experience, knowledge passed down, attention to what others overlook. Tension mounted as a slight movement in the corner drew their attention. Was it a harmless reflection, or something more sinister? The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Every adult froze for a beat, realizing the gravity of allowing a child to dictate the actions that could save or end a life. Elio's hand hovered near hers, not touching, but offering a shield, a presence that reminded her she was not alone, that her courage mattered. Lily's eyes met his, a silent dialogue, a negotiation of trust and responsibility. The baby's chest rose and fell steadily, but the vulnerability of the moment remained tangible, as though any wrong choice could unravel the fragile equilibrium. Outside the glass door, movement flickered again, subtle but distinct, hinting at a presence unseen, someone or something waiting beyond their perception. The emotional stakes deepened as Lily's determination clashed with the unspoken threat, and Elio's protective instincts surged, a tension-filled dance of power, vulnerability, and mutual recognition. Every second stretched, the monitor's beeps marking the heartbeat of suspense, each one a drumbeat pushing the narrative toward its next trial. The doctors, once confident, now followed her lead with hesitant acknowledgement, eyes widening at her knowledge, at her composure under unimaginable pressure. And then, as Lily adjusted her position to safeguard the baby further, a folded piece of paper slipped from the nurse's clipboard, fluttering to the floor in the dim light. Its contents were hidden, but the faint glimpse of a signature caught Elio's eye, a hint that someone within the hospital had a connection he had not anticipated, a revelation that promised the next challenge was closer than they realized, leaving the tension unresolved and the room poised on the edge of revelation. The subtle flicker in the hallway grew larger, a movement that pricked at Lily Mercer's instincts. She straightened, every nerve alert, sensing that the fragile calm was about to shatter. Elio Caruso's eyes, steel-gray and unblinking, tracked her reaction, a silent challenge and a shield all at once. The baby's rhythmic breathing provided a temporary heartbeat of reassurance, yet the room felt electrified, the air charged with possibilities that neither of them could yet control. Lily glanced toward the fallen paper on the floor, realizing that it carried information with implications far beyond what she had initially understood. A choice loomed, and the weight of it pressed heavily against her small frame. The doctors exchanged nervous glances, their confidence wavering as they noticed the intensity in her gaze, and Elio's lips pressed into a thin line, his presence a steadying force and a reminder of stakes she could not ignore. Each step she took to retrieve the paper was measured, her breath shallow, yet her resolve unbroken. As she lifted it, she caught a glimpse of handwriting that hinted at secrets hidden within the hospital itself, a truth that could alter alliances and trust in an instant. Elio stepped closer, and Lily felt the power dynamic shift subtly, his proximity an unspoken negotiation of respect and authority. The baby stirred, sensing the tension, small fists curling in instinctive reflex, and Lily's heartbeat synchronized with the tiny one's, creating a rhythm that underscored urgency and responsibility. Shadows lengthened, lights flickered, and the subtle noises of the building, the hum of ventilation, the distant footsteps of unseen staff, amplified every second of suspense. Elio's expression softened slightly, but the sharp edge of command never left his posture. He was both protector and judge, evaluating every action, measuring every decision. Lily's mind raced as she processed the implications of the paper, realizing that she had to act decisively to maintain control and ensure safety. The air thickened with anticipation as the doctors hesitated, unsure whether to intervene or trust the child who had already defied expectations. Elio's gaze remained locked on her, his presence a tangible pressure that tested her courage, yet also offered guidance in the face of uncertainty. Lily took a deliberate step forward, extending the paper, her voice steady, precise, but carrying the weight of urgency. The subtle shuffle of feet, the soft intake of breath from Elio, and the quickened beeping of the monitors combined into a symphony of tension that filled the room. Every second stretched, every glance carried meaning, and the unspoken understanding between the two of them deepened the emotional stakes. Then, a faint but distinct sound from the corridor outside, a door clicked, a shadow shifted, signaled that the next challenge was imminent. Lily's eyes widened, Elio's jaw tightened, and both recognized that the decision they made in the next moments would define the balance of trust, control, and consequence for everything that had just unfolded, leaving the room suspended in anticipation at the edge of an irreversible choice. The tension in the room thickened, as if every breath carried the weight of unspoken possibilities. Lily Mercer held the folded paper tightly, her small fingers brushing against Elio Caruso's as he leaned slightly to read it over her shoulder. The brief contact sent an electric current through the space between them, a subtle acknowledgement that power was shifting, that she had become more than a child in his eyes. Elio's steel-gray eyes softened for the first time since the crisis began, yet they were filled with a cautious curiosity, measuring her courage against his own authority. The doctors, unsure whether to intervene or step back, watched silently, their voices hushed, every instrument paused mid-air. Lily glanced at the baby, whose tiny fists curled instinctively, a reminder of the stakes pressing on everyone present. Elio's presence was both protection and weight, an unspoken warning and a comfort, and Lily realized how dependent she had become on his judgment even as she commanded her own actions. She straightened, inhaled sharply, and explained her reasoning, each word precise, deliberate, and imbued with urgency. Elio listened intently, nodding subtly, the shift in his posture a silent acknowledgement of trust and recognition. The room seemed to expand and contract with each passing second, the monitors ticking like a metronome to the heightened tension. A shadow moved again outside the door, subtle but unmistakable, pulling both their gazes toward it, their attentions suddenly aligned in a shared focus. The doctors exchanged quick, uncertain glances, realizing that the authority in the room had changed hands, even if momentarily. Lily felt a rush of adrenaline, her heartbeat echoing in her ears, a rhythm synchronized with the baby's fragile breathing. Elio stepped closer, not to dominate, but to guide, and the proximity created an unspoken bond, a recognition that he could not afford to ignore her insight, and she could not ignore his presence. The subtle noise of distant footsteps heightened the suspense, the hospital lights flickered as if in response to the emotional charge, and every person in the room felt the gravity of the choice unfolding. Lily's gaze flicked between the baby, the paper, and Elio, knowing that every decision she made in the next moments would ripple outward, altering perception, trust, and safety. A micro shift occurred as Elio finally extended his hand to steady the paper, his voice calm but commanding, offering a lifeline in the midst of uncertainty. Lily met his eyes, understanding fully that she had crossed the threshold, that the dynamic between them had changed, and that the next action would define whether the fragile alliance they had built could withstand the unknown forces now entering the room. And just as she prepared to act, a faint creak echoed from the hallway, subtle but deliberate, hinting that someone was approaching with intent, and the next decision could alter everything. The quiet tension shattered with a sudden click from the hallway door, a sound that carried more weight than any alarm. Lily Mercer's head snapped toward it, eyes wide, heart hammering in a rapid, urgent rhythm. Elio Caruso stiffened beside her, the commanding presence of a man used to controlling entire cities now pressed into the uncertainty of a single moment. The baby stirred again, a small whimper punctuating the silence, and Lily's breath caught as she realized the fragility of the safety they had carved out. The paper in her hand, evidence of her foresight, now felt heavier than ever, the responsibility of interpretation pressing down on her shoulders. Elio's eyes narrowed, reading her expression, noting the subtle shift from determination to concern, the way a single thought could change everything in the room. Outside the glass, a shadow moved deliberately, slow and precise, signaling that the threat was not passive and that every choice made until now carried potential consequence. The monitor's steady beeping sounded like a heartbeat against the building pressure, each tone amplifying the stakes, reminding everyone present that time was both an ally and an enemy. Lily took a cautious step back, balancing the baby's fragile needs with the unseen threat pressing closer, and she felt the weight of Elio's gaze, his silent assessment adding both tension and unexpected support. His hand hovered near hers, offering a protective presence without overstepping, and Lily sensed the delicate dance of trust and dependency shifting between them, her courage now intertwined with his authority. The doctors, uncertain and tense, moved with heightened awareness, glances flicking between the small girl and the Mafia boss, realizing the room's balance of power had changed irreversibly. Elio's voice finally broke the silence, calm but deliberate, instructing a minor adjustment to the baby's position, a command that carried weight not just for immediate action, but as an acknowledgement of Lily's growing influence and the mutual respect forming silently between them. Lily executed the instruction precisely, her pulse echoing in her ears, feeling the electric mix of control, trust, and unspoken expectation that now defined the interaction. Just as she straightened, readying to speak, a soft but distinct thud sounded from the end of the hallway, almost imperceptible, yet enough to make her blood run cold and Elio's hand twitch slightly toward the door. The baby's eyes opened briefly, reflecting the sudden shadow in the corridor, a mirror to the looming uncertainty, and in that instant, Lily realized that every decision she had made to this point had led them to a precipice. The room held its breath with her, the fragile alliance, and the tenuous safety hanging in balance, as the unknown figure outside stepped closer, each movement deliberate, and a chill of anticipation swept through the hospital wing, signaling that the next moment would demand an even higher level of courage and precision. The shadow at the end of the hallway moved with deliberate slowness, yet every step resonated like a drumbeat of impending consequence. Lily Mercer's heart raced as she tightened her grip on the baby's crib, every muscle coiled, aware that one misstep could undo the fragile safety she had fought to create. Elio Caruso's presence loomed behind her, his hands steady on the edge of the crib, his eyes scanning the hallway with a predator's precision, the weight of authority pressing down but tempered by concern for the girl who had just altered the course of life itself. The doctors remained frozen, uncertainty clouding their faces, as the tension in the room spiraled, thick and suffocating. Lily's pulse thundered in her ears as she considered the paper in her hand, the evidence of hidden threats that no adult had yet understood, and she realized that she would have to act decisively, not just for the baby's safety, but for the survival of everyone in the room. Elio's gaze met hers, a silent challenge, a test of trust, and she understood fully that her courage alone would be weighed against the consequences of the unknown presence just beyond the door. The baby stirred, tiny whimpers cutting through the charged air, and Lily bent slightly, whispering soothing words that mirrored the gravity of the moment, each syllable a thread connecting bravery, responsibility, and instinct. Elio's hand hovered, poised to intervene, yet he allowed her autonomy, his respect for her insight deepening the bond forged under pressure. The distant click of the hallway door echoed again, sharper this time, followed by a subtle shift in shadow, and Lily's eyes narrowed. Calculating, readying to make the choice that could tip the balance entirely. Every step, every movement, became amplified in the room's heightened awareness. The monitor's rhythmic beeping punctuated the suspense, each sound a reminder that time was fleeting. Elio exhaled slowly, controlled but tense, acknowledging the risk she was about to take, and Lily met his eyes, understanding the gravity, the weight of trust, and the magnitude of action required. The room seemed to constrict, the fluorescent lights reflecting off polished floors, accentuating every subtle motion, every glance, every minute shift in stance. A faint whisper of sound reached them from the hallway, deliberate, knowing, and the shadow paused, as if evaluating the room and the occupants within. Lily's mind raced, weighing instinct against information, courage against caution, and in that instant she knew the moment demanded a decision that would either protect or expose them all. Elio stepped a fraction closer, his eyes narrowing, tension mounting, and Lily realized that the choice she made next would define the fragile alliance, the balance of trust, and the unfolding chain of events, leaving everyone suspended on the precipice of revelation and danger, as the shadow finally moved with intent toward the room, promising a confrontation that none could predict. The figure in the hallway finally stepped into the pale glow of the corridor lights, and the room seemed to shrink around Lily Mercer, every breath weighted with anticipation. The shadow revealed itself to be a staff member she had trusted, eyes wide with an urgent message that could unravel the fragile security they had built. Elio Caruso's jaw tightened, his hand brushing against hers for the briefest instant, an acknowledgement of both tension and unspoken reliance. The baby shifted slightly, alert to the surge of energy, and Lily felt the pulse of responsibility grow heavier, knowing that a single misstep could reverse every gain. The paper in her hand now seemed almost prophetic, its implications pressing into the air with the force of inevitability. The doctors hovered uneasily, sensing the delicate balance of control shifting once more, and Elio's gaze locked with Lily's, conveying silent instruction and unspoken trust. Every second stretched, and then contracted, as Lily stepped forward, the weight of choice pressing into her chest. She delivered the message quickly, her voice steady yet urgent, and the room felt the ripple of consequence hit, subtle but profound, as everyone realized that actions taken so far had consequences beyond calculation. Elio exhaled slowly, muscles coiling in readiness, and yet his eyes softened, reflecting a moment of acknowledgement for the courage and insight of the young girl who had become central to the fate of his family. The monitors continued their rhythmic beeping, but now the cadence seemed tied to a new tension, a pulse synchronized to the unspoken stakes of loyalty, trust, and survival. Lily's mind raced, reconciling relief with apprehension, knowing that the choices made in the next heartbeat would redefine alliances and influence, not just for her and the baby, but for everyone in the room. The hall outside remained ominously quiet, the faint scuff of shoes suggesting movement yet revealing nothing, and a sudden draft from a half-open door sent shivers down her spine, a reminder that the world beyond these walls remained unpredictable and dangerous. Elio's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, a gesture of reassurance, yet the firmness of his presence reminded her that power could be both protective and demanding. The room collectively held its breath as the staff prepared to act on Lily's urgent guidance, and the baby's small whimper punctuated the charged atmosphere, a fragile heartbeat amidst uncertainty. Just as a measure of calm seemed to return, a soft chime echoed from the nurse's station, subtle but deliberate, hinting at information yet to surface, a fragment of truth that could either stabilize or destabilize everything they had fought to achieve, leaving the room suspended in a tense anticipation, and every eye drawn instinctively toward the unresolved doorway beyond. The faint chime from the nurse's station echoed again, and Lily Mercer froze, her eyes narrowing as every instinct screamed that something had shifted. Elio Caruso's presence behind her was no longer just protective. It was probing, calculating, weighing her decisions with the intensity of a man used to absolute control. The baby stirred, a tiny hand reaching out instinctively, and Lily realized the fragility of the moment extended beyond life or death. It was about trust, influence, and unseen power. The shadow in the hallway had moved closer, and now a subtle rustle of fabric suggested that the person approaching had a key, a piece of information or access that could change everything. Elio's jaw tightened, his gaze scanning the corridor, his voice low but commanding as he asked, "Who is there?" Lily's hand tightened on the paper, her breath catching as she considered whether to reveal what she knew, the hidden truth encoded in the notes she had intercepted. Every second stretched taut, the monitor's rhythmic beeping a heartbeat of tension, amplifying the weight of choice. The staff shifted uneasily, sensing the delicate balance of authority tilting between the girl who had saved the baby and the man who had ruled unchallenged for decades. Lily stepped forward slightly, holding the paper in plain sight, and in that instant, Elio's eyes widened, the steel gray giving way to a glimmer of disbelief. The folded page contained a signature he recognized, a name tied to someone within his closest circle, someone he had trusted implicitly, and the realization hit like ice through blood. The threat was internal, and every move made until now could have been anticipated. The room seemed to constrict around them, the baby's small whimper punctuating the heavy silence, and Lily's pulse raced as she understood the full stakes of the revelation she held. Elio's hand hovered near hers, a silent acknowledgement of her insight, yet the shift in his expression, the tightening of his lips and the furrow of his brow, revealed the magnitude of the betrayal. The staff exchanged uneasy glances, their uncertainty palpable, as the balance of power now lay not just with Elio's authority, but with the knowledge and courage of a 10-year-old who had seen what no adult had noticed. Lily met Elio's gaze, a silent pact forming, her resolve steady even as the weight of revelation threatened to overwhelm them both. And then, as the door at the end of the hallway creaked open slightly, revealing a glimpse of the figure who had caused this cascade of danger and insight, the room held its collective breath, every mind aware that the next step would redefine trust, control, and the future in ways they could not yet predict, leaving an electric cliffhanger hanging over the space like a storm about to break. The hallway door creaked wider, and the figure revealed themselves fully, a calm but intense presence that sent a shiver through the room. Lily Mercer's chest tightened, her small hands gripping the crib edge as if holding on to every ounce of courage she had left. Elio Caruso's eyes narrowed, the familiar control he wielded over every room in his empire now tested in this single, tense moment. The baby stirred, tiny fists clenching instinctively, and the monitor's beeping accelerated, matching the rising tension. Every doctor, nurse, and staff member froze, aware that nothing in the next moments would be ordinary again. Lily's mind raced, the weight of knowledge and responsibility pressing down on her like a tidal wave. She understood that revealing the truth now could save or endanger everything in the room, and yet hiding it might undo all the progress she had made. Elio stepped closer, hand hovering near hers, the proximity both protective and commanding, forcing Lily to reckon with the delicate balance of trust and power. Shadows shifted along the edges of the room, a subtle movement that suggested others were waiting, unseen, evaluating, and waiting for a slip, a mistake, a moment of weakness. Lily swallowed hard, her heartbeat thundering, every breath measured, as she prepared to make a choice that would define not just the safety of the baby, but the alignment of authority and loyalty between herself and the man who had become her unexpected ally. Elio's eyes flicked from her to the approaching figure, calculating, silent, assessing risk and instinctively weighing every action. The staff around them remained tense, sensing the undercurrent of impending revelation, their professional composure strained against the charged air. Lily's gaze swept the room, noting every detail, every potential hazard, and for a moment she felt the enormity of her position, a child entrusted with the power to alter outcomes far beyond her years. The shadow took another step forward, deliberate, and Lily's breath caught, the room suspended in a heartbeat, every eye on her, every thought focused on the decision she had yet to make. Elio exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders betraying concern, and the unspoken bond between them intensified, a silent pact of trust and expectation hanging in the air. The monitor's rhythmic pulse felt like a countdown, every second drawing them closer to a revelation that could change everything. And just as Lily's mind aligned with the magnitude of her next action, the shadow paused, eyes locking with hers, a wordless signal that the choice she was about to make would not just resolve the moment, but redirect the course of all that had unfolded, leaving the room on the edge of a climax yet to be realized. The hallway was silent, save for the soft, rhythmic beeping of the monitors, each pulse a steady reminder that life had been preserved. Lily Mercer stood back from the crib, her small frame tense but relieved, eyes still tracking every movement in the room. Elio Caruso leaned slightly forward, his hand resting lightly on the edge of the crib, his gaze softened yet unwavering, a silent acknowledgement of the courage he had witnessed and the trust now forged between them. The shadow from earlier had receded, leaving a lingering sense of unease, but the immediate danger had passed, and with it, a clarity settled over the room. The doctors and staff exhaled, their tense shoulders relaxing, realizing that the resolution had come from the unexpected, from insight and bravery that transcended age and status. Lily's hands relaxed on the crib, and she allowed herself a small, quiet smile, a moment of pride and relief washing over her. Elio's eyes lingered on her, the steel gaze softened by recognition and gratitude, a subtle shift in the power dynamic acknowledging that her presence had changed more than just the outcome of the night. The baby stirred gently, tiny fists unclenching, and Lily felt the profound weight of responsibility lifting, replaced by a delicate sense of accomplishment and connection. Every gaze in the room carried a new understanding, a quiet acknowledgement that the choices made here had altered trust, authority, and the measure of courage. The hospital lights reflected softly on polished floors, shadows stretching long, and Lily felt the significance of her actions imprinting itself deep into her consciousness. Elio's voice, calm but weighted, finally broke the silence, offering measured praise, his words affirming her insight and courage without overshadowing her agency. The room felt warmer somehow, the tension ebbing, replaced with a subtle bond between the two of them, built on respect and shared experience in the face of uncertainty. As Lily stepped back, glancing once more at the baby, she understood that bravery was not just about action, but about the clarity of mind under pressure, the willingness to confront risk, and the silent strength found in careful, decisive choices. Elio's hand lingered near hers, a quiet assurance, a bridge between authority and trust, and in that simple proximity, Lily sensed the depth of connection that had been forged. The monitors continued their steady rhythm, the room exhaling collectively, and yet a residual tension remained, a reminder that vigilance and courage were never fully behind them. And as the first traces of calm settled, a quiet thought lingered in Lily's mind, a moral echo, that courage, insight, and integrity could shift the balance of even the most formidable forces, leaving a lasting imprint that would not easily fade. The room settled into an uneasy calm, the monitors ticking steadily as if marking the passage of time in the aftermath of a storm. Lily Mercer stood near the crib, her small hands still trembling slightly, the weight of every choice she had made pressing into her shoulders, a reminder of the responsibility she had carried alone and with Elio Caruso beside her. The baby's breathing was steady now, a quiet rhythm that seemed to mirror the tentative truce forming between the young girl and the powerful man who had witnessed her courage. Elio's eyes softened, the steel gray giving way to a depth of gratitude and reflection, his posture slightly less rigid, as though he had realized that strength could manifest in unexpected forms. The doctors and staff moved quietly, their previous tension replaced with cautious acknowledgement, glances lingering on Lily, recognizing her insight and composure in the face of danger. Shadows from the hallway still whispered along the edges of the room, subtle and elusive, a reminder that the world beyond these walls remained unpredictable, yet Lily felt a sense of growing confidence, a recognition of her own agency. Elio stepped closer, a protective yet respectful presence, and in that quiet proximity, a bond had been forged, one that carried trust, recognition, and the promise of alliance in times to come. The paper she had clutched earlier now lay on a nearby counter, its significance lingering in the room, a testament to choices made and consequences faced, hinting at secrets yet to unfold. Lily took a deep breath, feeling the shift within herself, a mixture of relief, pride, an awareness that courage carried cost, and that every action left a mark beyond immediate survival. Elio's hand rested lightly on the crib edge, his attention never leaving her, a silent affirmation that respect had shifted, that authority could coexist with acknowledgement of insight, and that the lines between power and courage were more nuanced than either had imagined. The baby stirred, small eyes blinking up at them both, and in that moment, the fragility of life, the weight of responsibility, and the emergence of trust converged into a quiet, profound clarity. The room exhaled collectively, the tension softening but not disappearing, leaving an undercurrent of anticipation that life, challenges, and decisions were far from concluded. Lily glanced toward the hallway once more, the faintest movement catching her eye, a reminder that vigilance and courage would always be intertwined, that the story was not yet complete, and that the next step, unseen but inevitable, would demand both wisdom and bravery. The room finally exhaled, the monitors ticking steadily as if celebrating the fragile victory achieved through courage and insight. Lily Mercer stood by the crib, eyes lingering on the baby's tiny, rhythmic movements, a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet exhaustion washing over her. Elio Caruso leaned slightly against the counter, his expression softened yet commanding, a balance of gratitude and respect for the child who had become a pivotal force in the night's outcome. The doctors moved with a measured calm now, nods exchanged silently, their earlier tension replaced with recognition of the extraordinary events that had unfolded, and the weight of every decision made. Shadows played along the walls, gentle reflections of the late hour, yet the tension that had gripped the space for so long now transformed into a quiet, reflective energy, a recognition that bravery, trust, and decisive action had reshaped the course of events. Lily's gaze met Elio's, a silent understanding passing between them, the unspoken bond forged through peril and insight, a connection that transcended words and status, a recognition of shared reliance, and the subtle shift in power that had emerged. The baby stirred again, a soft sigh escaping tiny lips, a symbol of the life preserved and the vulnerability that had driven every choice. Elio finally spoke, voice low but steady, acknowledging her courage and clarity, his words a quiet affirmation that actions mattered, that observation and intellect could alter outcomes where strength alone could not. Lily exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing as she absorbed the gravity of the evening, understanding fully the weight of responsibility, the fleeting nature of control, and the impact of moral courage. The staff moved carefully, every movement deliberate, yet the atmosphere carried a lingering sense of awe, of the extraordinary interplay between fear, decision, and insight. Lily's small hand rested gently on the edge of the crib, her eyes reflecting a new maturity, a recognition that courage was not measured by size or age but by the willingness to act decisively under pressure. Elio's hand hovered nearby, a subtle gesture of protection and acknowledgement, the proximity reinforcing the delicate balance of trust and authority that now defined their relationship. The hospital lights glimmered softly, casting long shadows that danced across the walls, a reminder that life's fragility was constant and that vigilance, clarity, and bravery would always be intertwined. As the room settled into a new rhythm, Lily realized that every choice, every observation, and every courageous step had reshaped not just the immediate outcome, but the connection between herself and Elio, and in that moment she understood a truth that would linger far beyond the night, that insight and bravery, no matter how small, could ripple across power and circumstance, leaving a lasting echo of moral courage and the profound impact of acting with integrity.